How's it going? My name's Colin Winters. I'm the host of A Panthers Place. Today we get to go over the Carolina Panthers victory over the Green Bay Packers 16-13. So this game was a roller coaster of emotion and of blood pressure levels because the Packers were able to hold the Panthers offense so utterly still. It felt like the Panthers were trying to give this game back to them at all times. The Packers took a lead early, going up with a field goal in this game, and then the Panthers were able to get a touchdown early on, and it seemed like after that, the Panthers offense just could do absolutely nothing on the field. And we'll start with the offense then, because that is where the Panthers just looked bad today. I'm not going to sugarcoat it at all. Yes, we eventually did get to win. It did what it had to do to get that W, but it didn't look good by any stretch of the imagination. And while, yes, Bryce Young is coming back from an injury, he had that ankle sprain that kept him out a week that made Andy Dalton start last time, but it still didn't look great. And it didn't even come down to the fact that Bryce didn't have a lot of mobility. It just came down to bad play on offense. Because Bryce went for 11 completions out of 20 attempts for 102 yards and one interception. And that one interception coming from an air ball where it looked like he didn't get a good spiral at all. The wind caught it, and it went right into the hands of Packers safety Xavier McKinney. And so, yeah, Bryce didn't have the greatest of day by the number standpoint, but when it came to commanding the offense and making the throws he had to make when it was very important, he did do a good job in that. I mean, once again, he has a game-winning drive under his belt that puts all of 11 wins that he has into his career. 9 of them now include a game-winning drive. Tedero McMillan was once again the team's leading receiver because, of course, Bryce Young didn't put a lot of yards up on the stat sheet. They also didn't have a lot of yards for the receivers, but he did go for 4 receptions for 46 yards, and he made one fantastic contested catch against Carrington Valentine, who, if Valentine was any faster, probably would have snagged it for another INT, but instead, McMillan used his big body frame and was able to snatch it away from him for the first down. But once again, since we have seen so many times before this season, the story of the offense came to Rico Dowdle. Canales finally made the commitment to go to Rico Dowdle as our starting back to get the workhorse amount of carries this game, and it showed that it paid off in dividends. Rico Dowdle went for 25 carries and 130 yards and 2 touchdowns this game. The only 2 touchdowns the offense ever made. And he was an absolute beast this game because he was battling through an injury pretty much from the start. He was already looking a little bit sluggish, not in any sort of speed aspect, but when he was getting up from tackles, he was a little bit slow, nursing something on the inner thigh close to the groin. And throughout this game, there were multiple times where he had to come out and had the training staff kind of, give him a little bit of massage, work on that area a little bit, and he always came back in to finish the drive and make the plays that we needed. Twice on the day, he came out and then came back at the end of the drive so he could punch the ball into the end zone. That is the type of player that we need on this offense, and he has that dog in him. And while Rico Dowdle once again had a great day for the offense, the real story of this team is the defense. This defense has come such a long way from being bottom of the NFL last year, historically bad last year, gave up the most points in the league ever last year, to now being able to handle one of the top flight offenses in the NFL. Yes, the Packers can be hot and cold, and it definitely was a cold day for them when it came to red zone efficiency, but if you look at the numbers, they didn't do too bad in offense. Jordan Love was 26 for 37, 273 yards and 1 interception. Josh Jacobs had 17 carries for 87 yards and a touchdown, and Romeo Doubs was the leading receiver for 7 catches and 91 yards. It wasn't a bad day statistically for the Packers, but the Panthers made the stops when they mattered most. Although it won't show up on the main box score where a lot of people watch, Nick Scorton was a beast today. He was getting so many pressures on Jordan Love, constantly making them uncomfortable. Derek Brown did the same thing. You even had times where you had Christian Roseboom or Trevin Wallace being a free rusher through the middle of the offensive line, making him have to throw it away quickly. The one sack we had on the day did come from Turk Wharton, who has been having injury issues all this year, but finally showed up this game and was able to make a huge impact on that defensive line. Even if we weren't getting to the quarterback to put up a lot of sacks, you were constantly watching the Green Bay pocket collapse, form, and shape in weird ways, causing Love to have to be a little bit off kilter when he threw. And while he did make a lot of those throws, it definitely added to the fact that the Green Bay offense just couldn't get a proper rhythm going. And with reading the stats of both quarterbacks, you may have noticed neither one of them put a touchdown on the board today passing. In fact, they both had an interception each. The Bryce Young interception coming off of that bad ball to Xavier Legette that McKinney was able to grab, and then the interception from Love was on a pretty Favre-esque pass where he just kind of chucked it up into the air, and then Moberg was able to come down with it. And talking more about how great the defense was doing against Love, they were making him so uncomfortable that on a 4th and short or a 4th and goal, he was having to run around everywhere on that field and eventually just hucked up a prayer to the corner of the end zone that was almost picked off by Mac Jackson. And if he did pick that off, it could have been a pick 6. But a real reason this game was so close is a reason that neither team could control, and that was the weather. Because in Green Bay today, there were 14-mile-per-hour winds just on the normal end, and if you want to factor in how fast winds get inside that bowl of a stadium the frozen tundra is, it was probably a lot faster. The real field was probably in the 30s, and it was cutting through. Multiple times during this game when they were trying to kick it off, they had to get the punter to come out and be a holder for the kickoff because the ball simply would not stay alone on the tee. And it was that wind that really made a huge difference because McManus did miss 1 of 3 field goals he made today. It would be that field goal that came at the end of the first half, that would actually make it so the Panthers were up by 1 by the time the second half was starting. And of course, as you can see, that 1 point made a huge difference. Because even though this game was decided by more than 1 point, that feeling of what you were behind by changes the way coaches think about going through a game. It makes them either more aggressive or more docile because they don't want to go down more, or they want to go and get that point back and more. And speaking of aggressiveness, I have to get a shout out to Dave Canales because this time he felt like he was calling game to win. He was not nearly as passive as he usually feels like. We were going for it on 4th down a lot, and more often than not, it worked. And with his team being finally an average team, Canales is trying to bring us up to the next echelon of teams. Because we were sitting at 500 this game, and now we're finally, once again, for the second time this season, back over 500. It was the second half, though, where things got really stressful for the Carolina Panthers because as the offense was stalling out, couldn't get anything done. When we finally did get the next touchdown, it came at a cost because there was a just soft as shit unsportsmanlike conduct penalty called on Rico Dowdle after he punched in his second touchdown of the day because he did the Key and Peele sketch where he kind of hip thrusted a couple times and he only did 2 pumps and they still flagged him for unsportsmanlike conduct, which I think is the softest shit ever. It could have been the other way around and I'd still be calling it soft as shit because these are grown-ass men. If they can't handle a saucy celebration, then don't get fucking scored on. And I don't want to hear, oh, but think of the children. This is an incredibly violent game where grown-ass men are throwing themselves at each other at mock fuck. There is no reason to be crying, think of the children, when this is a violent game that they shouldn't be watching if you don't think they can handle a little bit of a hip thrust or a bow and arrow. But it was because of that unsportsmanlike conduct penalty that the PAT after the touchdown got pushed back. And because it was such a windy day, Fitzgerald was unable to make the PAT, and unfortunately, the game stayed a 13-6 game. It was then after that the defense got a couple crucial stops against Green Bay, but the offense was completely unable to do anything with it, and so close to the end of the 4th quarter, Green Bay was able to punch it in and put the PAT up to tie the game 13-13. That was around with 2 minutes and 32 seconds left on the clock. But despite the win and despite the fact that the offense had nothing going for it the entire game, they were able to put it on when it really mattered. Young was able to make crucial throws, and Dowdle was able to gouge the Packers defense to be able to make it downfield. And while they weren't able to get as close as they'd like to, they were able to set up Ryan Fitzgerald for a 49-yard field goal. And with as windy as it was, a 49-yard field goal would have been very dicey to try, and it still was. But the only reason we were confident enough to go for it with 1 second left, even after being iced by Matt LaFleur, was because Canales played a fantastic game thinking ahead. Because during this game, to start it, we took the ball first, meaning that the Packers got it at the start of the second half. But what's important about that is that even though they get it at the second half, we decide which way we want to defend from, which will determine what side and how the wind is coming towards us or behind us in the 4th quarter. And because Canales made that decision at the beginning of the game, knowing what he would want and what sort of situation we may be in, we were able to kick with an advantageous position to the win, and we were able to put it through the uprights for that 49-yard game-winning field goal by Ryan Fitzgerald. It's things like that that make me believe in Dave Canales as a head coach, because yes, he's had his pitfalls, he's made young mistakes that a head coach shouldn't be making, but stuff like that, the real cerebral part of the game, that's what you're a coach for. That's what you have to think of before the game even starts. You have to know the weather coming in, know what's going to happen, know what you can't control, and control what you can within that. And that's what he did. And doing that was the only reason that this game didn't go into overtime. Because if this game went into overtime with our offense as sluggish as it was, I don't know if our defense would have been able to keep going toe-to-toe with the Packers offense, because they were starting to get tired. So it's because of that foresight and that play calling that he did, that's why we're able to get a win. And the Packers, it was a fantastic game. And Packers fans, it was just so fun. And even though, yes, it's disappointing because you lost to the Panthers aren't that bad of a team anymore. We're a feisty team, and if you look at the record between Packers and Panthers games all time, they're always good games, no matter how bad either team is. So once again, a great game that no one else other than our two fandoms will ever really know about. And I have to say to all the Panthers fans out there who watched the stream with me, and to Tom Grossi who rated me last stream, thank you very much. Keep pounding. And that is how the Panthers won 16-13.